Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be a roundup of what I've read recently. I was doing these last year, like every couple of months, but I decided to do these quarterly just to make my life a little bit easier. So this is the books of the first quarter of 2024, now that we're in the beginning of April. So this is all the books I've read in January, February and March. I'm trying to go more seasonal with my reading this year, so I have a reading plan, which may seem a little bit too structured to people that prefer to read more spontaneously, and certainly every time I walk past a bookshop or go online, I am drawn to all the books that I see, and none of them are on my list, so my list just keeps getting longer and longer, and I just keep buying more and more books, and it's a bit of a problem. It's a bit of an addiction. But I do think that the plan is going to help me actually to read more, and I can make sure that I am ordering the books that I plan to read a month or so in advance, and then I always have a ready supply of books. Not that I really need more books, but yeah, I think this I'm liking this seasonal living, so I'm liking the seasonal books. So that's kind of what I've tried to go for this year. And I've also been trying to read a bit more non-fiction, with not fantastic results, I have to say. It's been a bit disappointing on non-fiction area, but I'm trying to do one non-fiction book a month and planning that in as well, which non-fiction I'm going to pick, and also trying to make it also a bit seasonal as well. So I do have my notes next to me as well as my pile of books, because I cannot remember anything anymore. My brain is like a sieve. But I'll actually start with cheating. I'll actually start with the books right from the end of last year, because when I did my kind of roundup of books I read in 2023, I hadn't actually finished off the year yet. So there was two books that I read in December. So the first was very Christmassy. It's the Faber Book of Christmas, edited by Simon Ray, but it's actually a compilation of I thought it would be all stories, because I've had this anthology. It's an anthology. I've had this anthology for quite a while. It was bought for me and I just never got round to it. It just never appealed to me for some reason. Perhaps because it's an anthology. I don't know, I didn't think I'd get into it as much as a story, as a fiction story. And I thought it would all be short stories within it, and I don't know why, for some reason that didn't appeal, but it's actually a combination of stories, extracts, poems, recipes, songs, and even some Bible passages, but I did not read the Bible passages. So I read all of this book apart from the Bible parts, and I did quite like it actually. There was some quite amusing and interesting Christmassy bits. So that was published in 2017. The next book that I read or the last book I read of last year was Ali Smith's Winter. So this is part of her 4 seasons quartet. So it really appealed when I'm doing my seasonal reading, obviously. So I had only read the autumn book, which I now think that I might have got rid of, which is really annoying, because I'm planning to buy this. I've already got the spring, which is in the list, and I'm planning to buy the summer for summer, and then I'll have an incomplete set, and then should I buy the autumn as well? I don't know why I got rid of it. I might not have done. It might just be somewhere in the house. I liked this book. It's a bit of an odd, there's an oddness to it. So it's 4 people who end up sharing a house together over Christmas. So there is Iris, who's now in her 70s and used to be a political environmental activist, and perhaps still is. Sophia, who is her sister, who's kind of a down on her luck businesswoman who's lived quite a different life since they were teenagers and became estranged. There's Sophia's son Art, who has recently been dumped by his girlfriend, and he is a nature blogger, but he fabricates much of his content. And then there's Lux, who is a Croatian stranger that he meets and pays to pretend to be his girlfriend just for the Christmas break, so he doesn't have to tell his mother that he's been dumped by his girlfriend. They all end up converging and staying together in this house. At the same time, Sophia, whose house it is being sort of visited, or I guess visited, by an image of a stone head, a floating stone head of a child that has been following her around for a while. And it's not really explained what that is. I liked it. Ali Smith is a very political writer, which I mean, I agree with her politics, so I don't have a problem with it. I think obviously if you disagreed with her politics, then you wouldn't appreciate reading it. I think the problem for me in this book is that it felt like people were making political speeches at the dinner table, particularly Lux, who's the Croatian immigrant. And I don't know, it just kind of ruins the flow of the book, of the story, but also just doesn't seem very realistic for the characters. So the third book, this was actually the first book of 2014, is London Fog, a biography by Christine Corton, also from 2017. Everything's from 2017 apparently. So I did a full review of this book, which I can link below, but to summarise, it is a non-fiction book about the famous fogs of London, and it was a bit dull, unfortunately. The next book was a nice little slim volume. This is The Ice Palace by Tarjei, a Norwegian author, from 1963. It was published in 1963, and it was different and interesting, and the winter landscape of Norway is integral to the plot, which is very interesting because that's very different to the relatively temperate climate that we have in the UK. It also focuses on child friendships and then also tragedy, and it was genuinely sad, but I didn't feel like I fully connected with it for some reason, perhaps because it is so short. Maybe you wanted a bit more, I don't know. So the next book has a jazzy green spine, which is quite fun. So this is sci-fi. This is The Three-Body Problem by Liu Cixin. So it's a Chinese author that has been translated into English by Ken Liu. And it's now a Netflix series. I don't know if I want to watch the Netflix series because there is like a series of books. I don't know if I should read all of them, but then I don't know if I totally want to. Anyway, rambling. So it's a sci-fi. It's not what I expected, but I did actually quite enjoy it. So it starts during China's Cultural Revolution, which I need to learn more about, but it was a period in the 1960s and 70s for about a decade where Mao Zedong tried to purge all the capitalist elements from Chinese culture, which led to something like 500,000 to 2 million deaths. Obviously I'm missing out a lot of the details there, but it was a period of violence and political upheaval as well as big changes to people's lives. I need to learn more about it. So the book starts in 1967 and Ye Wenji witnesses the Red Guards beat her father to death. He was a university professor and he refused to deny what he'd been teaching, I suppose, the physics, the theoretical physics that he'd been teaching. So she witnesses him being killed. Subsequently, she then moves out of the city and is working in like a kind of labour camp, cutting down trees, which upsets her because she just sees this change to the landscape of this forest or this wood and all the trees being just chopped down and the impact it's having on the natural world. And so she helps another person there write a letter to like whatever, Central Command, whatever it's called, asking them to stop. And because of that, she ends up being arrested and imprisoned. But because of her physics knowledge, she does not just get put in prison. She gets given the opportunity to work on a secret project instead of going to prison, where she will have to live on a base for essentially the rest of her life. So she agrees and doesn't fully know what the project is at the time. Many decades later, Wang Miao, hang on, the internet says Miao. Wang Miao is a scientist who has been asked by the police and the government to infiltrate a secret group of scientists because they believe that they are related to the deaths and suicides of several prominent scientists. And it somehow relates to what happened to Yi Wenji back in the 60s. It also somehow relates to a game called Three Body Problem, which was not about dead bodies, as I initially thought. It is about heavenly bodies, like planets and suns. And so that's the science fiction aspect of it. You know, we go to different planets and there's 3 suns. There was a lot of science in the book, and my little ignorant brain couldn't quite handle the science, and I honestly couldn't tell you whether some of it was science or science fiction, because the science was too advanced for me. And I don't know whether sometimes it's the translation, but it seemed sometimes it is a little bit clunky, and it kind of detracted me from the plot and the characters, that there was just so much science. I personally would have removed that or cut that right back. Obviously, if you're more into science, you probably wouldn't have done that, so it was just a personal thing for my little brain. But yes, that was like the January reads, and they were cold, wintry. So you've got the Ice Palace book with the Norwegian winter, you've got London Fog with like foggy winters in London, obviously Alice Smith's winter book, and the Faber Christmas book with December, but it's all kind of part of like winter reads. Three Body Problem, not really wintry, but I just thought let's throw some sci-fi in, you know. I got the book for Christmas, so I read it. February was about love and relationships, so I started with Love, A History by Simon May. This I did not finish, and I found it really hard to get into. What I think I wanted from this book, and this is part of the problem, is that my expectations, I just picked the wrong book for me. I saw a book in like Waterstones or somewhere which was like Love in 50 Objects, and it was a big coffee table book, and it was like 50 objects that kind of in some way represent love or relationships or romance. I didn't really fully look at it. I don't really have space for a coffee table book. I knew I wouldn't really read it, but I kind of wanted something like that. A history of romance, I think, is what I wanted, not a history of love. It's very philosophical, because he's a philosopher. Again, I just didn't really know what I was getting into when I bought it. And it's also got a lot of like references to religion, and it's where our modern idea of what love is comes from. And so he talks about Christian love or Christian ideas of love, and then also like Hebrew scripture, Plato, Aristotle, and so I didn't get past that part, to be honest with you, so I didn't really get very far into it. It's not even a long book. I couldn't keep reading it. I didn't understand what he was saying. He talks about his idea of love is ontological rootedness, and I read the explanation of what that is, and I still can't tell you what that is. So if you know what ontological rootedness is and you're interested in it, then that might be the book for you. Not for me. So the next one after that kind of failed, because I didn't actually finish that love book. I just wanted to go with like a nice, short, easy read. This is another Alice Smith book called Girl Meets Boy. This is from 2007, and it is a retelling of Ovid's story of Iphis. Iphis was in Greek mythology a child that was born a girl but raised as a boy, so in secret, because her father wanted a boy, and the mother was worried that the daughter would be killed, I think. So the god said, raise her as a boy and everything will be fine. So she raises her in secret as a boy, and then on her wedding night, before she's about to marry a woman, she gets transformed into a man, so it's all alright. It's an interesting story, because I don't know how progressive that really seems. It's Greek mythology, anyway. So, I mean, if you look on the back and it says that it's a remix of Ovid's Most Joyful Metamorphosis story, I think that sounds very inaccessible, but actually it's quite a straightforward read, and it's also quite a short book as well. And it's mainly about the story about two sisters, Anthea and Midge. So Midge is the older sister, and she works at a company in the marketing team. Or she works for a company that is like selling bottled water, and then she gets her sister Anthea a job there, but it doesn't really work out. And Anthea then falls in love with a genderqueer environmental activist who is like spray painting on the signs. And so it's about her relationship with Robin, the activist, which is like the girl meets boy. But then I guess also Robin is also the girl meets boy of the story, or the title as well. But also it's about Anthea and Midge's relationship, the two sisters. Yeah, it's nice, I liked it. So the next book is by Yoko Ogawa, The Housekeeper and the Professor. So this was in my theme of books about relationships for February and like love and stuff, but actually they don't have a romantic relationship, so I think I was confused about what the book was about. But I did a full review of this, so I can link it below. But it is about a woman who is a housekeeper, and then she works for a retired maths professor whose memory ended in 1975, I think, or 1976, when he had a car accident, and so his short-term memory resets after every 80 minutes. It's a bit of a you have to suspend your disbelief for that kind of narrative device to work, but their relationship is quite nice, so I liked it. And then the next book is All the Lovers in the Night by Meiko Kawakami. So another Japanese book. I do like my Japanese books. So I also did a full review of this. This one is from 2011. I did a review of this, so I can link it below. But Fuyuko Eri is a freelance proofreader in her 30s living in Tokyo, and she realises that she has been essentially coasting her way through life and not really making any active decisions about her life until she meets a man that she falls in love with, but that triggers some painful memories from her past to surface. So this book I started in February, but I think I finished it in March, so it was like a bridging between the 2 months. It's another sci-fi, so there's every month is sci-fi month, really. You can just throw a sci-fi book in whenever you have a gap in your schedule, I think. I need to read more sci-fi, and more modern sci-fi. But this is Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I love the cover. I don't know if it's catching the light. There's like all shiny bits. It's all about the cover for me. Yeah, so I like this. This reminded me a lot of David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas or Ghost Written, a lesser known of his books, but every section is a different character and a different time period, and you move forwards in time as you go from one section to the next until you get to the middle of the book, and then it kind of brings you back again through those sections, through those characters somewhat again, back to the start almost, but it's not quite as neat a journey backwards in the second half usually, but that is like the same format of Cloud Atlas, which is a quite well-known book and was also a film. So it did have that kind of similarity of the kind of structuring to me, but I did like it, and I did think it worked, and I did think it kind of when you got to the end, it kind of all kind of tied up nicely and satisfyingly, and the threads throughout the time periods all joined together in a pleasing way. I think my problem with these books is you only get a section with each, or a chapter with each character, and I liked the first character and I would have read a whole book about him, frankly. Or like, you know, I didn't get enough time with each character, and they were actually quite likeable characters. Unlike some of David Mitchell's books, where a lot of his characters are actually quite unpleasant, and you think, God, a whole chapter, this is actually quite challenging, you're really obnoxious. These characters are much more sympathetic, for the most part. So as I said, this is sci-fi, but it is quite gentle sci-fi. So we do move forward in time, we do go into the future, and people are living on the moon, but there's not that much in terms of spaceships or aliens or robots, stuff like that. Like, it's not Star Trek territory, it's much more gentle than that. So maybe like a nice introduction to sci-fi if you're not totally sure for some reason. Sci-fi is just period drama set in the future, not the past. That's what you got to remember. The book is, and the characters in the book are looking at what is real, and is this world real? That is the question that they are trying to answer. I think, given that it's not a very long book, it's quite a big question in not much space, but it's done quite well. The one thing I think though is that the characters, it's a little bit, you have to suspend your disbelief again, not because of the living on the moon part, but because people are making decisions and getting very worked up about this big question of what is real, and doing a lot of stuff off the back of that, with not really a whole lot of evidence to go on that there's actually even a problem to begin with. So, I don't know, that part was a bit like, okay. But it's a short book, so obviously she didn't want to hang around, go into more detail. I liked it. It's a good book. I did enjoy it, and I would read another of her books again because I did like her writing style as well. So the next one, Mothering Sunday by Graham Swift, was published in 2016. Mothering Sunday is just the real name for Mother's Day in the UK. I don't know that anyone calls it that anymore though, but it is in March. And so I read this on Mother's Day. Thought that was very seasonal. Does have a naked lady on the front. Don't think you can fully see. Yes, I did read this on Mother's Day. It's not really about Mother's Day though, really. It's just about something that happened on Mother's Day in 1924. So the main character of the book is a young orphaned maid who on Mother's Day doesn't have a mother to visit, so she's not quite sure what to do with her time. But she ends up having a sexual encounter with the son of a nearby big house who she has a prior relationship with, but who is at the moment engaged to be married to somebody else. So it's like an illicit assignation. And then the rest of the book, so there's quite a big chunk of the book that is focused on that encounter, and then the immediate aftermath of what happened next. But then the book does move forward several decades to her when she is older and what happened during the rest of her life, and her moving away and becoming an author and getting married and living elsewhere. And I liked it. Getting down to the last few. So Ali Smith again, spring this time, from 2019. So Ali Smith is becoming one of my most read authors. I'd say I don't know if she is actually my favourite author. I mean, I do like her work, but I just kind of wanted to read these seasonal books. So this one I think I liked more than the winter one. I don't know really. But yeah, this one is more about hope. At least that's what Ali Smith says. But it does actually move through not just spring, but then it moves into autumn. So it's not just totally saying spring, which annoyed me when I was reading it because I wanted seasonal reading. So I did say with the winter book that people do seem to make sort of political speeches, which kind of detracts from the flow of the plot and doesn't seem realistic for the characters. I would say that I feel like that happens a lot less in this book, so that was better, but it is still a political book as the two main characters. One is a filmmaker who is mourning the death of his friend and former lover, who was also a scriptwriter, and he's also estranged from his daughter as well. And then the other character is a young woman who is an S4A4 employee who is working at Yarlswood, so the immigration detention centres, which are horrible places, and so it's about her working there and then them coming together when they encounter a young girl who turns out to be the daughter of like a refugee or asylum seeker, and who seems to have been able to somehow get into the detention centre and make the guy in charge, whatever they're called, the manager or whatever, clean the bathrooms and the toilets and stuff, and like sort some stuff out, and she becomes a bit of a legend around the centre, and then they actually meet her. Yeah, I liked it. I think I liked it better than the week. And then the last book I read is Life in the Garden by Penelope Lively. Finally, a non-fiction book that I actually enjoyed reading, and also it seems quite seasonal because it's about gardening. So I like Penelope Lively as an author. I have read a couple of her books. Cannot remember now off the top of my head what my favourite of her book is. I don't know. Moon Tiger, that's it. I've also read Family Album, but Moon Tiger was better, in my opinion. Yeah, this is like kind of a memoir of hers, as she is now, well, she was in her 80s when she wrote this. Don't actually know if she's still alive, to be honest. From 2017. But yeah, it's like a memoir of her life as a gardener, as opposed to much about her literary work, but about her experiences gardening. But then she does also talk about gardens, how gardens have been represented in art, in literature, how gardening, the fashions and styles of gardening have changed over time, and the impact that's had on gardeners and the way that gardens have been created and grown. And I don't know, it was nice to read, and it was interesting, and it was enjoyable, and I wanted to keep reading it, and I just like Penelope Lively. So those are the 12 books that I've read, 10 technically in 2024, 2 sneaky ones from last year. I am now just started reading Emma by Jane Austen, so that's my first one for April. So I'm hoping to do like a full review of that at some point in the next few weeks. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, if you've read any of those books and liked them, didn't like them. Any suggestions for reading would be appreciated as well. Give me a like and a subscribe, and I will see you next time.